Coming off the World Series appearance, how should the D-backs attack one of the biggest off seasons in their franchise's history? And from the start of the regular season through the end of the postseason, who would you say is the D-backs MVP? Well, that's what we're going to decide as we hand out some end of season awards, all on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I'm Millard Thomas, host of this wonderful podcast. I've been hosting Locked on Diamondbacks since 2020, and now the D-backs enter the offseason off a World Series appearance, and we got a lot to discuss pertaining to that. If you want to see more content by me, please check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com, to see all my latest work, like my photos, graphic design, and articles. So go check out my website, please. For today's show, we're going to be handing out some season-long awards from the regular season through the end of the postseason. Who's the D-backs MVP, Cy Young, everything pertaining to awards. So we'll discuss that in segments number 2 and number 3. But before we get there, I first want to discuss the D-backs offseason and the mentality that the D-backs need to have this offseason, because they're coming off a World Series appearance. Free agency, you can start signing players 5 days after the conclusion of the World Series. So I think Monday or Tuesday, players could start being signed, and the D-backs need to be one of the more aggressive teams this offseason, because my big strategy for the D-backs this offseason, what their mentality needs to be, is bold. That's what the D-backs need to be this offseason. They need to be bold. After seeing what the ceiling of this D-backs team was this past season, getting all the way to the World Series, this front office needs to do everything in their power to get back to another World Series. I don't want to just see the D-backs front office and Ken Kendrick talk about spending money. It's one thing to say things, it's another thing to do things. And we need to see the D-backs actually walk the walk. I need to see the D-backs actually spend money this offseason. Don't tell me about how much money the D-backs made this postseason because off that magical run. I know the D-backs made money. Most teams, when you go to the World Series, are going to get some extra economic revenue in your pocket. And it's not like Ken Kendrick is broke. He wasn't broke before this D-backs postseason run. He's not going to be broke anytime in the near future. Ken Kendrick bought the D-backs franchise for $238 million. If you check the value of the D-backs right now, it's $1.38 billion. Would it be this franchise as like 10 times the amount over the last 15 years? And so if owners want to cry about not spending money, about not having money to spend on the team, it's always a lie. Don't let the owners fool you. They could always be spending more. And Ken Kendrick is a prime example. You should not be using this postseason run as an excuse or a reason as to why you're finally going to spend money. The money spending should have always been the case. You should have always been open to the idea of getting, maybe into the top half of the payrolls in Major League Baseball. And hopefully the D-backs can finally do that this offseason, because what we just saw from this team, the Cinderella run, it was crazy that this team was even able to make it to the World Series. It exceeded all expectations, and they had obvious weaknesses and holes on this team. And so they need to address those concerns with smart but bold swings this offseason. The D-backs need to recalibrate where this team stands and look at this team as a team that can compete right now, as a team that is a World Series contender right now. There is no more rebuild when it comes to the Arizona Diamondbacks. This team is ready to win right now. And that is the mindset you need to have heading into the offseason. So many teams waste their window of opportunity because they think they have time. They look at maybe they're ahead of schedule like the D backs and they have a young team and you say, you know what? We weren't expected to be here. Maybe we slow play this thing instead of trying to maximize the window we have right now. So many teams, I think, have that philosophy, end up missing their window of opportunity. If you look at the New York Yankees in 2017, they would have said they were ahead of schedule with Aaron Judge coming onto the scene, Gary Sanchez and the Gleyber Torreses, young core for the not for the Arizona Diamondbacks, for the New York Yankees, Luis Severino. The Yankees team felt like they were ahead of schedule, being just one game away from the World Series in 2017. But little did they know that was their best opportunity to get back to their first World Series since 2009 was 2017, and maybe the Yankees haven't done enough to maximize their opportunity since 2017. The Cubs, they did win the World Series in 2016, but when you look at that young, star-studded core, they haven't really done much since 2016. And you would have thought with how many young studs they had in that lineup and overall on that team, you thought they would have been able to build a sustainable winner. And that's a team that won it all. That shows you how tough it is to have sustained success. Same with the 2015 Mets, right? That's probably the best example to compare to this Arizona Diamondbacks team because the 2015 Mets were young. They got to the World Series ahead of schedule. They had Matt Harvey, Jacob deGrom, Noah Syndergaard, a super young rotation where going forward, you're like, this is going to be the pinnacle, the building blocks of our franchise for the next few years. And there's no way we don't at least have another opportunity to get back to another World Series. And the New York Mets never did. The New York Mets kind of sucked after 2015 until they got their new owner, were able to win 100 plus games, last season. So there's a bunch of teams we've seen in recent memory who've reached the highest level and actually won it and have been close to the highest level. And each time they had their opportunity, they've either they either capitalized on it or they didn't. But in all three scenarios I just laid out, it all kind of happened quickly. It all happened over the course of 1 year, and then they were not able to build that sustained success. That's where the D-backs need to fix that. They need to take smart, bold, big moves this offseason, but that lead to sustained success over the next few years. The D-backs need to be all in on this team, and they need to be able to build a team that can compete over the next few years and not just be the 2023 one-hit wonder Arizona Diamondbacks. The D-backs can't get comfortable with where they are right now. And I don't think they will be. I do think this team, this front office will go into the offseason and actually make some moves because I think the breadcrumbs that they laid out this past regular season shows us that they will at least go into the offseason and try to do some things, right? I don't think you cut the Mad Bums and the Nick Ahmeds. And I don't think you pick up dudes at the trade deadline like the Tommy Phams and the Paul Sewalds. And you don't do the up and down nature of your outfield and your rotation with sending guys up and down from the minor leagues unless you had a strong commitment and a strong urgency for winning in the near future. And I think the D-backs are only going to take the plan that they laid out in the regular season with the urgency that they showed last year and just add to it, add more fuel to the fire, right? It's not the first time that we see, it wouldn't be the first time that we see the D-backs potentially make a very big, bold move in the offseason. Just last year, we saw the D-backs make a super bold move in the offseason when they traded away a Dalton Varsho, a guy who is a super young, controllable asset, someone that could play elite defense, hit for power, run the bases. That was not an easy decision to move off a Varsho. But what did the D-backs get in return? You got back a Gabriel Moreno, another young asset who looks like the catcher of the future. Lourdes Gurriel, veteran who had a career high in home runs this past season, a real middle of the order bat, and was fantastic for the D-backs in the postseason as well. while Dalton Varsho for the Toronto Blue Jays struggled this past season. That is the kind of bold swing that I loved, that I want to see the D-backs take more of this offseason. I definitely want to see this team spend money, but if you also want to use your farm system and some of the young assets currently on your major league roster as trade bait, I think that would be really smart too. Bottom line, D-backs need to be bold this offseason. Go out there, get aggressive. Most of your young talent is controlled for at least the next couple of years. The time is now for the D-backs to make some noise. And if you believe the D-backs are going to make some noise this offseason and increase their World Series odds for 2024, then why not go bet on it on FanDuel Sportsbook? Because score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. My favorite thing to do is the same game parlay. When the Lakers are playing, I take a LeBron James over on points, AD over on rebounds, and the Lakers money line. That hits every third time I try, but when it does, I love getting a little extra money in my pocket. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right. Let's get back into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. Let's hand out some end of season awards. And these are awards that take in both the regular season and the postseason. These are full season awards, not just the regular season and not just the playoffs, all encapsulating awards here that I think really represent some of the players on this team. And I think I got some of these awards. I think I hit the nail on the head. So let's start handing out some awards. And if you disagree with any of the players who I give an award out to today, please go tell me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks about Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. Now, the first award that I want to get to, we're going to start off with the big guns here. We're going to start off with the MVP, most valuable player, of course. I think this one is a little bit obvious, but I still want to discuss it. MVP, Corbin Carroll, the rookie for the Arizona Diamondbacks. This man finished 6th in Fangraphs in WAR and 9th in WRC Plus in the National League. He had a fantastic first full season with the Arizona Diamondbacks, first rookie in Major League history with 25 home runs and 50 plus stolen bases, led the NL in triples, had over 100 runs scored, and he was just dynamite with everything that he did. All expectations for this D-backs team was exceeded this year, and so was Corbin Carroll. I didn't know what kind of season to expect from Corbin Carroll because he was still a rookie, and you still never know. You can talk about a prospect, you can hype up a prospect, you can say this guy's going to be a future all-star all you want, but how many times do we see prospects, can't miss prospects, I'll add, not live up to the billing? Corbin Carroll was a can't miss guy, and he's even better than anyone probably expected. And there's still room to grow with Corbin Carroll. This is someone that had slightly a below 800 OPS with runners in scoring position with a 280 average. He can get better in those moments. He can still get better in high leverage moments. There's still so many areas for Corbin Carroll to improve in its game. He can still get better against lefties as well. Corbin Carroll is already a stud. He's already a superstar in Major League Baseball, all-star as a rookie, running away with the Rookie of the Year award. Everything you want to say about Corbin Carroll, all their superlatives that you can use for Corbin Carroll, all that's accurate. Any adjective you want to use, accurate. Corbin Carroll is the future of the D-backs, and he's also one of the faces of Major League Baseball, and I'm so grateful that he dons that Sedona red. Honorable mention here, Ketel Marte, for the major bounce back season he had in the regular season and for the postseason run they had. hit it. He had a hit in every single game in the playoffs until the finale of the World Series Game 5. So Ketel Marte, honorable mention for MVP. Other honorable mention, Christian Walker, power, near 40 home run season, middle of the order bat, and just elite defense once again. Those two guys, strong honorable mention for MVP. How about the Cy Young Award for the D-backs? Who was the best pitcher for the D-backs the whole season? I'm giving it to Merrill Kelly. Some might think Zach Gallen, but Merrill Kelly finished the regular season with both a better ERA and strikeout rate than Zach Gallen. And when you throw in what Merrill Kelly did in the postseason, I think that just cements this award for Merrill Kelly. Kelly was so nasty and filthy in the postseason. I had the utmost confidence in Kelly every time he pitched. A 2.25 ERA this postseason, 24 innings pitched, 6 earned runs, and he had 28 strikeouts as well. He was elite, a .833 whip. And in the World Series, he was even better against the Texas Rangers in that game to start. 7 innings, 1 earned run, 9 strikeouts. I'm going to remember that start for such a long time. How Merrill Kelly pitched in the World Series. I think that game 2 start by Merrill Kelly was the bright spot this World Series. You got your offense to absolutely shellac the Rangers at home. And then Merrill Kelly twirled a gem. I think Merrill Kelly is the definition of a big game pitcher. When the Brights got the hottest, Merrill Kelly stepped up in the postseason, had never won a game against the Dodgers until he faced off against them in the playoffs. Every time the D-backs needed that big Merrill Kelly start, he came through for them time and time again. I think Merrill Kelly, with what we saw in the WBC, what we saw in this postseason, I think Merrill Kelly has officially entered his name as one of the best big game pitchers in Major League Baseball. Honorable mention here still has to go to Zach Gallen for what he did the regular season, the first half, started the All-Star game, potential Cy Young Award winner for most of the season, struggled down the stretch, struggled in many postseason starts, but still, when the D-backs needed him most in Game 5, pitched a no-no through 6 innings. We still love Zach Gallen. I still think he's going to win a Cy Young in his career. And then the final award I want to hand out before we hand out more awards in segment number 3, the unsung hero for the D-backs all season. I'm giving it to Gabriel Moreno. Moreno was such a major and critical piece coming over from the Toronto Blue Jays this past year. Just barely missed his Rookie of the Year eligibility, because if he had it, he probably would have finished top 5 in voting for Rookie of the Year, right behind Corbin Carroll. It would have been him and whoever else is going to be in the mix. Honestly, after Corbin Carroll, I don't even care who's in the mix because he's running away with it. But Gabriel Moreno, fantastic season for the D-backs this year. We know the win-loss record when Gabriel Moreno is in the lineup for the D-backs. They're tremendously better from a winning percentage standpoint. He has been elite defensively, arguably the best defensive catcher in Major League Baseball this year, the best at throwing runners out on the bases, great pop time, great at blocking balls, just elite defensive season from Gabriel Moreno. Crush lefties at the plate, was a lefty killer all season. And down the stretch in the second half of the season, he had like over a 300 average, over 800 OPS, and was moved up to number 3 in the lineup in the postseason because of how clutch he was in the NLCS, NLDS, had some major home runs through the first 3 rounds of the postseason, came through in Game 2 of the World Series as well. Gabriel Moreno, unsung hero for the D-backs from the regular season to the postseason. He did so much for this team, and I'm so grateful. We tried to make it work with Carson Kelly. He was one of the headliners in the Paul Goldschmidt trade. He was supposed to be a top prospect catcher of the future type, have some power. So he was supposed to be an offensive catcher, really. Carson Kelly, first season with the D-backs, looked really good. Past that, really wasn't that effective at all. Gabriel Moreno, I don't have the same concerns with him. I think with his hitting tool and how good his defense already is, even if his bat falls off a little bit, you know his floor is at least arguably the best defensive catcher in Major League Baseball. So for that reason, Gabriel Moreno is the catcher of the future for the Arizona Diamondbacks and was the unsung hero for the D-backs in 2023. Now I'll be handing out some more awards like who was the most improved D-back this season and who was the best newcomer among others. But first, all right. Let's get back to the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. And thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners. So please continue to hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. And please follow Locked on Diamondbacks wherever you stream your podcast. Now, let's get back into the Locked on D-backs podcast and let's hand out some more awards. The next award I want to hand out is the most improved player award. And this one I think has to go to Geraldo Perdomo, who is by far the most improved player on this D-backs team because he went, in my head, from non-factor dude who could just eat some innings at shortstop. Because remember, in 2022, Geraldo Perdomo played 148 games. It wasn't like we had a small sample size of Perdomo. He played 148 games. And in those 148 games, he had below a 200 average. Like, if you just want to look at traditional baseball stats, I know everyone wants to talk about WAR and WRC Plus and your advanced stats and your WABA and your StatCast stuff. Let's look at some traditional stats for Geraldo Perdomo in 2022. In 148 games, 195 average, 547 OPS, 5 home runs, 40 RBIs. He had 10 hits. Like, it was just a terrible season. Like, he was a non-factor offensively, led the NL in sacrifice hits as well. Like, that's all he was good for in 2022. But in 2023, he made major strides to his game to the point that Perdomo was an all-star for the D-backs this season. And I think it made sense because in the first half of the season, 271 average, 787 OPS. And honestly, if you go back and look, the shortstop infield ballot was just kind of weak at the All-Star break. So he kind of made it because of positional value as well. But Perdomo was very good for the D-backs in the first half of the season as a dude who came through in the clutch. Like, when you look at those runners and scoring position numbers for Perdomo the first 3 months of the season, fantastic. And if you look at it right now, Perdomo ended the year 313 average, 948 OPS for runners in scoring position. That's why he was an all-star for the D-backs this season, because he came through time and time again. When the D-backs needed a run, you could count on Perdomo, even in high leverage moments this season. 292 average, 823 OPS. Perdomo was arguably the clutchest dude on this D-backs team this season and one of the clutchest players in Major League Baseball this past year. Multi-game hitting streak that went from the end of the NLCS to the start of the World Series. He had like a 6-game postseason hitting streak. Good in the final few games against the Philadelphia Phillies, where the D-backs had their back against the wall and needed to come back to make it to the World Series. Perdomo, breakout season, and he was an honorable mention for unsung hero as well, because it feels like when Perdomo is getting it going at the bottom of the lineup, it changes the whole complexion of this offense, because you might have Perdomo getting on base at the bottom, and then you have the top of the lineup coming up. Perdomo can do damage for you at the bottom. And I feel like this lineup takes so many cues from Perdomo's at bats, because I feel like he has one of the best eyes on this team, one of the best batting eyes on this team. So when Perdomo is perceiving balls and strikes, however he's perceiving it, I feel like the rest of the team is going to follow. I think he has a great batter's eye, really keen in that area. So Domo, most improved player for the D-backs this season. This is a fun award. The Big Cojones Award. The person that I trust to come through in a big moment, high leverage moment. Perdomo, another guy that's an honorable mention for this award, but I'm giving this one to Kevin Ginkel, who all season and even more in the postseason, I don't think there's a guy I trusted more in a big moment than Kevin Ginkel. Nails in the postseason. When you look at his postseason numbers, literally gave up no earned runs, 11.2 innings pitched, no earned runs, 15 strikeouts, and I just thought he was absolutely dominant. How many times did he come in like he did for Zach Gallen in that game 5 finale against the Rangers and just get your dude out of the jam. He was fantastic all postseason, coming off a really good regular season where he kind of had a breakout season, right? He came on the scene in 2019 with a 1.48 ERA, double-digit strikeouts per nine, below one whip ERA, or below one whip, not ERA, just below one whip back in 2019, his first season in the big leagues. And we're like, can Kevin Ginkel be the closer of the future? 2020 pandemic season, awful. 2021, awful. 2022 showed some signs of progress, but still a small sample size, 29 innings pitched. Then this season, back to that 2019 Ginkel, almost double-digit strikeouts per nine, under a one whip, a 2.48 ERA in the regular season. Fantastic. And now with what we just saw from the postseason, Ginkel is locked in to be the setup man for the D-backs next year. And I think he's locked in to be one of the go-to relievers for the D-backs for the next couple of years. Best newcomer for the D-backs this season? I'm giving it to Lourdes Gurriel. I think you had Paul Sewald. I think you had Gabriel Moreno, all as honorable mentions here. Tommy Pham as well, but I'm going to give it to Lourdes Gurriel here because I truly think the energy he provided the first couple months of the season really helped the D-backs get off to that fantastic start. He was coming through in a big way in the clutch the first couple months. I remember there was a couple games in the ninth inning where Lourdes Gurriel was the one to deliver the big hit. First half of the season had over a 800 OPS, hit a career high in home runs this past season. He had over a 850 OPS with runners in scoring position this past year. And in the postseason, he was really good as well. High leverage moments, over 1,000 OPS this past season. So it's like the clutch numbers love Lourdes Gurriel from this past year. The postseason numbers were good for Lourdes Gurriel this past year. I thought it provided great energy. I thought we lost something in the locker room with the guys like Eduardo Escobar moving on from this team. I thought Lourdes Gurriel, from his energy and his play, infectious in the locker room. So I'm giving him Best Newcomer Award. Best Diamond in the Rough, the guy who I did not expect to be good this year, but was Ryan Thompson. He was discovered by the D-backs off waivers from the Tampa Bay Rays, and he was fantastic for the D-backs in the regular season, only allowed, I think, one earned run in the regular season for the D-backs, 13 innings pitched, one earned run. Then was really good in the postseason, and he was probably the third most valuable reliever for the D-backs in the postseason. It definitely went Paul Sewald, Kevin Ginkel, and then you could say Ryan Thompson was that go-to seventh inning guy where it's like if you could get it to Thompson in the seventh or sixth inning, whenever he came in the ball game, you felt like you had a chance to win that postseason game. Ryan Thompson seems locked into a bullpen spot next year. Very excited to see the D-backs bullpen run it back, hopefully with a couple new additions, but hopefully Ryan Thompson can run back the play he had this past year because he was so good for the D-backs down the stretch. A real revelation finding him off waivers, and I'm excited to see him back in the D-backs uniform next year. And then the final award I'm handing out, the player I'm buying the most stock in heading into 2024. I think you guys could probably guess who it's going to be. It's the guy who sucked in the regular season, but came up huge in the postseason. I'm taking Brandon Pfaadt for this award. He was not good in the regular season, gave up a lot of hard contact, right? A lot of home runs, 22 home runs in 96 innings pitched, but we know this guy can be a strikeout artist. We saw what he did on the biggest stages in the postseason against the Dodgers, the Phillies, and the Texas Rangers. We're hoping that postseason unlocks something for Brandon Pfaadt, showed him a level of confidence in himself and his ability that he can be that dude that we expected coming up from the minor leagues. So I'm buying as much Brandon Pfaadt stock as possible heading into 2024 with a honorable mention for Luis Frias because I kind of liked how he looked this past postseason. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. We'll start breaking down potential offseason targets for the D-backs to go after in free agency. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.